Right, let's discuss this further now with the University's South Africa, Mahlubi Mabizela, Chief Mabizela, who is joining us. Chief, good to have you. Thank you very much for coming on this evening. Let's start firstly with the biographical data of those who are affected by this capacity shortage at higher institutions of learning in terms of accommodation.
Good evening, Tabo. Thank you very much for having us. It's going to be difficult to give you biographical data. In fact, I don't think you are going to be able to get it anyway, because the recording of those students who are struggling to find spaces would not be there, and therefore you wouldn't be able to have their biographical data. But we can make assumptions. Of course, the majority of students who write grade 12 are from black students, basically. And then the number of students at the universities who are already in, the majority, again, in excess of 85% would be black students. And black, in this case, is encompassing African, Indian, and colored. So we can therefore assume that those who are lacking spaces, who are unable to find spaces at the universities, the majority would be black students because of those two numbers that we are taking, those of grade 12 and those who are within the higher education system already.
I mean, that immediately would tell us that I suppose it places a challenge in the transformational agenda that institutions of higher learning need to have, because that's precisely the students who actually need to have access.
Yes, absolutely. In terms of numbers, that would be the case, and in fact, it's reflective of the demographics of the country. So it's absolutely nothing new, and it's not necessarily reflective of transformation. It's reflective of the demographics of the country. But also remember, as I have said, it's in excess of 85% those that are black students in the higher education system. But you wouldn't stay there only. You wouldn't be counting transformation only in terms of numbers. There would be other elements. Again, another statistics I can give you is that the majority of students at universities are women. Close to 60%. I just didn't look at the number now recently, but last year, the number for 2022, that was last year, 2023, the number for 2022, it was around 59%.
Yeah.
Those students being women students.
Let's move on then from demographics and look at the challenges in two areas. One is the challenge of accessibility, just sheer accessibility, even if they are there. But the second one is the adequacy of this accommodation. What are the challenges?
There are challenges, indeed. I had the clip, I think you were playing the recording there of Professor Jansen. It's correct, there are challenges in terms of spaces that we are having at the universities. As the years progress, there's less and less spaces available for students, particularly at first year level. And then, it eases up as you go higher, second, third, fourth year, and so on. Now, that's both in terms of the availability of spaces, let's say, in the lecture room, but also it's always been critical not having enough spaces for accommodation, in this case, student residences at the universities. The majority of our universities, of course, have got residences as well. So there is that challenge. Yes, it's structural in terms of, the physical infrastructure, but also in terms of the number of students that pass grade 12 who are eligible to enter universities, particularly in this case, those with a bachelor pass. And so the number is growing, as you may have reflected previously after the announcement of the grade 12 results. So the number is increasing. That percentage means actually the numbers of students are getting more and more out of grade 12, and therefore seeking spaces, particularly at the universities.
Yeah.
But Thabo, it's not only the universities that are there. Of course, there are private institutions, but of course there are TVET colleges, and often they are cited as alternative. And the Department of Higher Education has always been trying not for those TVET colleges not to be seen only as alternatives, but as first choice by students. But the problem, of course, is that of alignment, which Prof. Jansen actually was also pointing in his clip, that of alignment of the programs or courses that the students do at basic education level, which then would lead them into TVET colleges, the skills program. So there is structural planning. But also there's that planning of alignment of the programs from basic to higher education or to post-school education and training.
How does it affect those first-time learners? I mean, you would agree that Chief, the experience of the learners is quite important because they are beneficiaries of the system. And most of the time, the ones that we speak to, they'll tell you that they'll either sleep on the floors of the toilets, others will sleep on whatever halls that they find or underneath the bridge or whatever, and they're expected to come and participate in an academic program and perform.
Well, look, even the way you are saying it, Thabo, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for everyone who cares. And that would be a parent, that would be a student, that would be the lecturers at the institutions. It's not like they don't care. But, the failure, it's the failure of the system in this case, and then as I've explained, for instance, the channeling of students from basic education to higher, as well as the lack of spaces, the physical infrastructure at the higher education institutions. And I think to some extent even, the TVET colleges are affected here. Yeah. So heartbreaking, yes, but it's not going to help us. What will help us is a better planning by the system, because you see, there's this notion as well that, if the residential institutions are not working, then UNISA becomes an alternative. Yes, UNISA is actually our biggest institution in the country, and it's among the biggest in the world. And that's for a reason, and that's because in many instances it's seen as an alternative. But when it comes to UNISA being really an alternative for a child who has passed grade 12, it's really not an option, honestly. And that is just because of the learning environment that a child at, let's say, 19, 20, 21, you can even go up to 25, that the child at that age still requires a lecturer in front of the class and not to be studying distance. And the distance education becomes an alternative for those who are mature intellectually, those who would be able to study on their own, who are self-driven. And even there, in terms of age, even there, we still need lecturers in front of our classes, Thabo. So it's a system problem. It's a system problem. So UNISA doesn't necessarily become an alternative, even though UNISA is the biggest in terms of numbers of students.
So challenges of student accommodation, of course, go further than adequacy and accessibility. And as you know, with the many cases that we report and that I'm sure yourself has had to deal with, it's the question of insecurity on campuses and irregular security arrangements that sometimes put learners in a precarious position and in danger, but not only learners, but even the staff, the professors there that get affected by this.
Yeah, I'm going to sound redundant, unfortunately, Thabo, in this case. And the redundancy is this, that, again, it's the system's problem. It shouldn't only be shouldered with the institutions of higher learning or post-school education and training. The security, and of course, it shouldn't be a deterrent for students to study. What is required to be done, and the institutions are doing quite a lot in this case. in terms of providing that security in many forms that they can, in terms of personnel, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the technology. The institutions are there, but you still get the breaches of security. And in many instances, is the breaches within the institution. So it's not someone coming from outside and breaking through to the institutions. Yes, there are some of those cases, but within the institutions. And it's certain things that are unavoidable or that it would be difficult for the institutions to prevent. And this is the societal problem in this case, Thabo. So you will recall as well that, we do have this problem of, let's say, for example, gender-based violence that's taking place within homes, and it would be difficult for government to provide security inside your house, that instances of GBV shouldn't be taking place within your house, your household. So it's therefore the problem of society. The society has got to be doing something about that problem. Similarly with the institutions of higher learning or post-school education and training, that's exactly what should be happening as well. And I think what institutions are doing is also to involve communities in issues of security within their campuses. So it's not something that they are only taking it up themselves. Those institutions that are advanced, they are involving communities within the institutions to solve this problem.
So from a student support services point of view, what can be done? So we are dealing with, people are saying, okay, how do we deal with this? One, the challenge of demand for student accommodation. Two, the quality, as we are talking about it. The other layer is the affordability of it. And then, of course, the security issues. I mean, would funding be a solution? More student funding be a solution here?
Well, more funding absolutely is a solution to some extent, to a large extent, not even to some extent. The funding, you can see, for instance, you could see after fees must fall, when the announcement of free education, that it accommodated quite a number of students, and it was needed by the system. People come from poor households, let alone, therefore, the issue of people who are not qualifying to access that funding still going ahead and be provided with the funding. So those are important issues, but a side issue in this case, because, it's a reflection of the desperation as well of many households needing money. So money is certainly a solution, but not only in terms of provision of tuition fees or making education free, but also money in terms of providing the infrastructure that we referred to earlier on in all its various forms of infrastructure, be it technology, being physical buildings of the institutions, buildings in terms of student accommodation or lecture rooms. So those are needed. Those are desperately needed. It's not an expense that is a luxury in this case. It's a needed expense at the university. So money, again, required for infrastructure. Quality, probably in this case, maybe I can safely say to you, Thabo, that in terms of quality of education in South Africa, I think we always undermine ourselves. We are there in terms of quality. Whether you are going to higher education institutions, universities particularly, or you are going to private higher education institutions, those institutions provide quality assured program. Unless, of course, there are some crooks who are including programs that are not quality assured, then that is a different issue. But the programs that are quality assured, that are offered by these institutions, are programs of quality. So we can rest assured when it comes to quality, and that we are comparable. We are competitive around the world. There are many proxies one can use for that, and to demonstrate or illustrate how quality higher education is in South Africa. But then the issue of security, again, you know, the solution, of course, the institutions have got policies, institutions have got the infrastructure that they provide, which includes personnel. I think we should keep on trying on this one, as well as I have said, it's a societal problem. So we shouldn't shoulder the problem only with the institutions, even at schooling level for that matter. You still get these problems of insecurity. Yeah.
Appreciate your time, Chief Mahlubi Mabizela. He is with the University of South Africa, Director of Operations at Sector Support there.